and access panel. Thank you.
So I'm Ed Wengryn. I do the government relations work for New Jersey Farm Bureau. And I'm filling in for Ashley Kerr, who has been working with this committee a lot more than I have. But thank you for having us here today. I'm going to introduce our speakers in this. We have Nicole Broadwater, who coordinates the Farm to School program for New Jersey Department of Agriculture. Carlos Rodriguez, he's the executive director of the Community Food Bank of New Jersey. And I got to meet him at the Monmouth County meeting a couple weeks ago. Warren Shields is the director of food services for the Bridgeton Public School District. Rachel Cherry is the national partnership director for the Common Market, a nonprofit regional food distributor. Desmond Hayes is the founder and owner of GeoGreens, an indoor hydroponic farm here in Mercer County. And Kadri, who oversees operations and business development for Lima Family Farms in Somerset County, Hillsborough Township. And my co-presenter or co-facilitator, Devin Cornia from NOFA, New Jersey. So Devin, I'll let you dive in first.
Thank you, Ed. And thank you everybody for really stimulating conversation here. This is a great event. So my name is Devin Cornia. I'm a farmer, local food systems fanatic, and I currently serve as the executive director of NOFA, New Jersey, the Northeast Organic Farming Association. Wicked excited to see all this progress being made in farm to school and local food purchasing efforts. The opportunity to work with institutions, I think, there's tremendous potential for growing New Jersey agriculture and in turn increasing New Jersey food security within our state. And I just wanted to mention, I love a Civil Eats headline from 2016 that described institutional purchasing as the sleeping giant of local food. I can't think of a better term to use to describe the opportunity within institutional purchasing. So that being said, we're going to start with Nicole and Carlos. We'd love to hear about the new funding streams coming to New Jersey to support the scaling of operations for historically underserved farmers and to increase local food availability for New Jersey schools and emerging communities. Specifically, we'd love to hear about the federal funding programs that will build or expand relationships that benefit both the farmers and the low-income and low-access communities. We're talking about the Local Food Purchase Assistance Program Cooperative Agreement and the Local Food for Schools funding. So Nicole, we'll start off with you if you don't mind. Could you please tell us about the Local Food for Schools funding? What's the funding for and how it will be implemented in New Jersey?
I can, and I have a cute little PowerPoint to go with it.
Nicole, just tell me next or advance or whatever cue you want to give me and I'll.
No problem. So the Local Food for Schools Cooperative Agreement is a program from the USDA and the state of New Jersey. The Department of Agriculture applied for the grant. What we're doing is we're rolling it out to schools. So the schools did not have to apply for it. They have to accept the funding. And the funding is 100%. It goes to farms, local farms, only New Jersey, farmers or producers for schools to purchase local. You can go to the next slide. So I believe I said this, but the focus of this is for states to assist in the supply chain. So we want to make those connections. I know that came up a lot in the discussion already, is to make the connections. That's why I'm glad I'm here talking about it. I say to everyone, I will shout it from the rooftop. I want everyone to know about this funding. So it's to assist in the supply chain. So we want those schools to purchase local. The emphasis is on historically underserved. So the goal of the grant is to purchase from socially disadvantaged and small farmers. And then who receives the funding. So I touched upon this, but just to give you some numbers, there's 653 schools that were eligible for the funding. It was distributed based on their average daily participant, and schools are opting into it right now. They have until December 30th. So far, we have 258 schools that have opted in. There are several outstanding. So who it is in your school district is the business administrator. They're the ones that are opting in. So for all of you advocates out there, if you look for the business administrator, if you want to shoot an email, a support, accept the funding, because this funding, once schools don't accept it, we're going to redistribute it to the schools that did accept it. So the funding, $5 million, no matter what, will be distributed. You can go on. Oh, and I just talked about, I was so excited about the money. So where can the schools purchase? Again, they have to purchase in New Jersey. The USDA, it's 400 miles, but we went a step further. We required them to purchase within the state of New Jersey. So if you're a farmer on here, you know a farmer, you're reaching out to farmers, this is a great opportunity. I think Devin touched upon about institutional. Schools don't go out of business. So this is the time they have the money. I know historically they don't have the money. Right now we're giving them the money to spend. It's extra above the National School Lunch Program. So this is a time to make the connections with the local schools. And again, they do not go out of business. They'll always be around. When can school food authorities use the funding? So actually the 258 schools that have signed on already have approval. So they actually already can start spending their money. And then it's going to go all the way to March of 2024. So that's when they'll have the schools have this extra funding that they can use. I just wanted to give you some examples because it's not just on the school lunch. We try to expand it because it's a stretch for schools that have to come in, and if they are serving cutting, I don't know if you guys ever went to the farm and brought something home. I spent an hour peeling beets the other day. They were delicious. They were from Specca Farms, but I digress. Okay, so some of the ways that the schools can use the funding. They might want to purchase local chicken. They might have had a vendor that reached out to them and said, hey, we want to purchase local chicken, but it was a little bit of a stretch, a little bit more. This funding can give them the opportunity to make that connection, and they could purchase the local chicken. That will just go right on the lunch line. There's other schools, these are all true scenarios as well. There's other schools that have reached out to farmers. The farmers in the past have donated their food because they wanted, it was important for them to get local into the schools. And when a farmer couldn't donate, the teacher pulled it out of her pocket and got $50. Now this funding can go to that. So if they're doing programs, if they're doing backpack to home, if they're doing an extra tasting, these are the ways that they can use the funding to make those connections, get the local farmers in the school. And then the farmers market, if they just simply want to use it as an educational tool, you get a local farmer, maybe they have again, not to use Specca, but I just happened to be there yesterday. They have they have all their winter crops. If the schools want to make a connection with the local farmers, they can bring in may make a farmers market, the kids can go and purchase there. I say. So if you want to know more, because there's a whole bunch of information about this online, I encourage you to write down our website. There's actually a tab for local food for schools that's going to be updated throughout the duration of the grant, which I said goes to March of 2024. We have resources on there. We're going to expand it. We're looking for farmers. Again, we're looking for farmers who want to sell to schools, because the schools right now are looking for people to purchase from. And they want to make these connections with local farmers. They're excited. So you can always email, the email's down there, njdalfs@ag.nj.gov, for all of you who have your pen.
So Nicole, can we dig a little deeper before moving forward to Carlos? Can you talk about maybe some of the barriers to utilizing local foods in schools? By my understanding, a lot of it sometimes comes down to equipment. And this might be getting into the nuances of the cooperative agreement, but could some of the funding typically reserved for food needs, food products, be supplemented with the grant, and then those line items be pivoted towards sourcing equipment that the school could then use to, how do we get creative with this funding?
Again, because we tried to expand it. So the equipment, we have equipment grant. So the New Jersey Department of Agriculture actually right now has equipment grants, so schools can apply for equipment grants. It's separate. This particular grant is exclusively for the produce and I shouldn't say produce, for unprocessed, minimally processed food from New Jersey farms. Again, getting creative. They've already thought of unique ways to bring it in, just bringing in the whole foods, doing backpack problems. That way you eliminate the equipment need. It depends on the school and what they're doing. You'd be surprised at how creative schools can get, though. But that's a good question. Thank you.
I'm sure we'll speak to that later on with the rest of the panel. In terms of approachability to schools and farms themselves, are there certain best practices that farmers should anticipate when trying to connect with the school?
I think that question is probably better for the panel. But so Warren, I believe, is on the panel, and I know he has made connections. I believe Rachel is as well. They're really kind of in the trenches doing the work of connecting the schools with the farmers. So, I mean, it's a good question. I wish I could answer it fully. It also depends on the school district and their set of rules.
All right, forgive me for jumping ahead. Let's go to Carlos. All right, Carlos. The local food purchase assistance cooperative agreements were designed uniquely to each state, and some states even began implementation this past spring. Can you describe Community Food Bank of New Jersey's approach to this unprecedented infusion of funding? And can you also discuss the greatest challenges for this opportunity?
Well, thank you, Devin. And it's good to be on a panel with so many friends and folks that are going to make this kind of come to life. I think a little background first. Why produce and what's a food bank that you might have an imagery about what we move is doing in kind of like this local food purchasing of produce piece. But the fact is that produce is a key and perishable product is a key and important part of the meals, the food that we distribute for meals. And that has increased dramatically since the pandemic, and it's positioned to stay over the next few years as we anticipate and expect a long recovery ahead. So when we talk about food and produce for food, let me quantify that for you. Before the pandemic, we were providing maybe enough food to support about 50 million meals. Today, we're providing enough food to support 85 million meals across the state. As a part of that, there was always produce. But back in just fiscal year 19, that used to be just over 14 million pounds of fresh produce. Now it's over 35 million pounds of fresh produce. And throughout that journey and increase, we've obviously invested in local capacity of our pantries to be able to handle store produce so it aligns with their local distribution. And of course, we've made capital changes here to be able to bring in produce and route it in a way that gets it to where it needs to be in a timely way and in a way that maximizes its use. And so as part of that, and I have to acknowledge Secretary Fisher here, we've been working towards this over the last 2 food banks that I've been a part of. We've been working on how do we get more of our local farmers engaged. And we really made strides even before this grant came along. We started purchasing locally through a local shop that actually sources locally and then boxes it for us so that we have more boxes kind of going in. It was part of a pilot that I think was another USDA initiative under the previous administration. We kind of built on that and improved it. And then that gave us all of that gave us an opportunity to really apply and be competitive with the state to go after this funding. And so let's talk about this funding and this tremendous opportunity. Our focus is, again, to make sure that as we provide food, it's healthy. Our job is not just to end hunger, but to really provide food security and not create a health crisis or exacerbate a health crisis. So making sure that the food is nutrition is a key component of that, whether it's fresh or nutritious. We also understand in terms of this grant that there are opportunities to be more intentional in our procurement by aligning our organization's missions and values with purchasing policies. So what does that mean? When we talk about DE&I and understanding DE&I in our space, in our food security space, it means really knowing who the neighbor is and what they need from food, which leads us to more nutritious food and more perishables. But if you really step back, it also creates an opportunities for us to source through a DE&I lens as well. And I think this grant kind of really aligns with those values of ours as well. Along with our partner food banks, we see this investment as an opportunity to really pilot work that we hope will continue well after LFPA funding ends. So again, we were purchasing produce well before this grant came in. We will continue to purchase produce because it's part of our nutritional goals and distribution goals. This just makes it creates an opportunity to really bring in literally a diversified group of folks that we can procure from. So the LFPA is an opportunity to really advance not just our food distribution goals in a way that it meets local neighbors' need, but also really looks at advancing economic development in the state while really helping people become more secure, helping our neighbors become more secure. And we see these things really kind of going hand in hand and strengthening what we refer to as kind of like the broader ecosystem of this entire network, not just the food banks, but and our local partners, but really how we bring in food, which, you know, you think of a food bank, you think of food donations. In fact, we've been purchasing food for many years. And a larger majority of what we're bringing in is purchased in order to make up that bundle of food that makes up the 85 million a year that we need to be able to sustain kind of the food needs of the community at this moment. So that's a little bit of background, I think, on the grant. I'd love to give an overview of what the local food purchase assistance cooperative agreement is, and we're excited. We did not get the funding in the spring. We actually just received the funding. Were notified of the award probably about a month and a half ago, and we just signed our contract last week. But nonetheless, we have been planning for this for quite a while. And so, what's this? This is, as I mentioned, funds from the United States Department of Agriculture, distributed to us through our partners at the New Jersey Department of Agriculture. It is a 2-year grant, and the total funding for the grant is $9.7 million that's been allocated to New Jersey. And the project, again, it was co-created with our partners in NJDA, and we've already identified partners that we'll be engaging with to help us identify eligible farmers based on the grant requirements, and to help us with some of the capacity analysis and structure that we need. We envision the $9.7 million to be broken up into 2 parts, about $1.5 million for equipment, supplies, and other capacity building to be able to enable this food to get into where it needs to be. And this is mostly to support farmers. And then $6.1 million for actual purchasing for New Jersey producers. And that's on top of what we're already spending. So there might be an opportunity to leverage more of the dollars that we're already spending if the capacity is already there. Once we start exploring and kind of building traction on this. It also includes funds to transport produce from farms to communities. Right now we have a dual, actually a triple method or 3-pronged method to get food into the local communities. We distribute a large percentage of the food that we give. We coordinate direct distributions from vendors or from donors, and then there's pickup. And depending on what makes the most sense for the local community and the local partner, we may be engaging in any one of those 3 means of distribution in order to transport the produce from farms into the communities. And again, there's a lot, as we all know, and as I've already heard from the last panel to now, there is a lot of different components. It's not just pick it from the garden and get it to the neighbor in need. It's the prep on that. It's making sure you have the right volume. And then does it need to be handled or stored in any different way? And so again, a key aspect of figuring out, well, how ready can we be at the farm, or do we need to then figure out an intermediary approach, is some of the partners that we've identified that we'll be working with. And I have to just acknowledge Rachel Terry, who's here from Carmen Market, who will be one of those partners with us. And so we're really looking forward to doing something that I've had a vision to do from day one of food banking in New Jersey, is how do we really maximize and not just get food that New Jersey has to procure, but do it in a way that creates economic development and sustainability for our farms. Doesn't make any sense if I'm purchasing that we can't figure out how to do that. That being said, it's easier said than done, because commodities prices fluctuate, and obviously we're a charitable organization that are looking for both diversity, but we're looking for fixed price points in some cases in order to sustain what we need to do over the masses. So this is a tremendous opportunity to kind of work at both ends of it, and leverage the kind of infrastructure that we've done. And the goal is really simple. The goal of LFPA is to really build a stronger, fairer, more equitable New Jersey by funding improvements to this aspect of the food system. And again, we see, you can summarize what I've mentioned in just 2 really key points. 1, bring opportunities to local and socially disadvantaged producers, inclusive of farmers, but it's not just, it's not exclusive of anyone else. And develop, and of course, through that, developing of purchasing relationships, as well as support for producers to overcome challenges in the supply chain. I'm not a farmer. I don't come from market or food industry, but I know how to take care of people in need. And it doesn't require a significant amount of sourcing and procurement and problem solving. So I think this falls kind of squarely into that kind of, hey, how do we connect the dots here? And then the second thing is we want to channel these purchases to the food banks and to the networks of distribution partners, which in a way that will ensure broad access to wholesome, healthy, and delicious food for our neighbors in need. I mean, what could be better than locally grown, picked a couple of days? All of us who run small gardens, and I'm guilty of that, just, they just never taste the same as if when you pick it there and you make it available and it's on your plate in that short amount of time. Well, we want to make sure that that's done in an equitable way. I don't want to leave it up to chance that one program partner can do it or has the capacity to do it. We know with how many neighbors are food insecure and where. So now we have to layer in a response that brings in fresh produce to all of them, not just the programs who've been able to solve this on their own. And I think that's the beginning. Let me stop there and maybe take some questions and keep going.
I don't mean to cut into you, and in the interest of time, I'm going to pass it along to the next panelist, but we appreciate the work that you're doing as well as Nicole. It's vital and very exciting. So Ed, if you want to go ahead and proceed with the next panelist.
So we'll probably start with Warren, since he's at the center of this pilot project to increase local food purchase in the schools. And then we'll ask sort of each of the participants, Rachel, Desmond, Kadri, how has your experience been working on this project? So Warren, if you can kind of lay out what the school's initiative is and what you've been doing, and your intakes on that and how you found the program to be working for you guys, and then everybody else can kind of follow up with their experience working with you on this project.
Thanks, Ed. Not to throw it in, but I think we need to start with Rachel, because without Rachel, we wouldn't have had anything. So if we lay it out that way, it'd be a little easier.
That works for me. So Rachel, if you want to start.
Everything's on Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. And I'm just so honored to be having this discussion with Warren, Desmond, and Kadri about the work that we've been doing for the New Jersey Local Food Incentive Pilot. So I'll just lay some groundwork for the why behind this work and what we've been up to over the past year. And love that we have, our operator and farmers representing all pieces of what the vision and our goals of this outcome have been, of this pilot have been. So the New Jersey Local Food Incentive Pilot is a program that Common Market launched in partnership with Zone 7 and other direct local farms here in the state of New Jersey. And the point of this program was to provide school districts additional funding for the purpose of sourcing New Jersey grown product for their school meal operations. This is, it might sound a little bit like LFS, and I promise we didn't have a crystal ball at the time of creating this pilot, but really what we've seen across the country is that states are recognizing that the reimbursement rates that are coming out of USDA for school meal programs often do not cover the cost of what it would mean to invest deeply in local growers within their state. And at the same time, as we know, schools and other institutions serve as really meaningful market opportunities for family farms. There is a tremendous opportunity to be connecting farmers here in New Jersey to schools and other institutions that are rooted in community, that are often feeding thousands of individuals every day, and that have this real tremendous purchasing power that can drive impact and resiliency into the types of farmers and producers that we're looking to support here in New Jersey. And so we launched this pilot last year in partnership with Warren at Bridgeton Public Schools and with Arlesia in Camden City School District. And the pilot was a grant program that was given to both schools. And we gave the food service directors the option to say, hey, here's a fixed amount of funding. The only stipulations that you have around this funding is that you're sourcing from New Jersey farmers and producers. Like, what is your dream lunch? What's something that you have never been able to source before? Or what would you do if you just had this extra funding available? And I think what hopefully we'll get to in this conversation is what came of that, is what can happen when school districts have these additional resources at play that are tied specifically to building equity and economic opportunity for farmers here in New Jersey, and what that means both for the students and the types of foods that they can now access in their school meal programs, and the producers that can benefit from those sorts of operations. So maybe I'll leave it at that and pass it off to Warren to speak on the operator side of what this pilot has meant.
It's been, thank you, Rachel. It's been tremendous here in Bridgeton. I've been a director since 2016. And one of the dreams I always had was to do salad bars. I heard a gentleman from out in California talk about what a benefit his students had in California from being able to partake of salad bars and it not be in a lunch line, just be there for them to get, and they could take as much, salad and cucumbers and berries that they wanted to take. And that drew my interest because, he said, that's going to combat diabetes, high blood pressure, and just give our younger kids, a better chance at being healthy as they go through school. Well, I met Rachel probably about the same time, and looking at the information that the common market will put out, we didn't have the money to buy some of the things that were on their price list, and it was always a hard sell to try to get in and do some things. But we began our relationship and we worked, and I'm actually a board member for the common market. I love them so much. But when they came to me and they asked me about the pilot and what we would do with salad bars right away. So we started with 3 schools. We partnered with Food Corps. We have a Food Corps service member that went in the classrooms and we did trainings. We talked to the kids about how are you going to go through the salad bar? What are the ethics? What would you take and why would you take it? Everything that you would think about, that you should learn about going to a salad bar, we did it with the students. We had a visit from Assemblywoman Sawyer and, the team from the Common Market. And Holly was astounded that on pizza day, you could smell pizza cooking throughout the cafeteria, probably in the hallways, just like you did when you were little. The kids come running in, and instead of running to the pizza line, they ran to the salad bar. And it was so amazing to see Holly get excited about those kids getting at that salad bar and wanting it, that the principal had to come over and calm them all down. It was amazing to see. But that impact is felt throughout our whole district. There are teachers now, because we only had it in 3 schools, because we had to limit it because of the funding. There are teachers that are calling or emailing saying, when are we next? When are we getting our salad bar? Because the kids are hearing about it throughout the district, and they want to know when they're going to have the opportunity. So that money that we got from the common market, now the LFS money, like Rachel said, I wish we would have had a crystal ball to see, but that money has now expanded our reach in the cafeteria, because we're going to be up to now 7 salad bars as soon as we get them in come the end of December. So it's been wonderful. I'm glad we partnered with Rachel, Terry, and the common market. Desmond is on. Our kids love the greens. I mean, we don't have bowls big enough for them to put hydroponic greens in, but it's amazing too that we hooked up with Desmond, because at our high school we have 2 hydroponic systems that we're actually growing different greens and things from. And Desmond's busy right now trying to make sure he fills orders, but we're gonna get Desmond down to come take a look and see what we're doing. But just really making that connection and the education of what they see, and what we call our outdoor classroom and what they can eat in the cafeteria has just been, tremendous. We're glad Common Market signed on to us. So I think Desmond, you can talk a little bit about our greens and our relationship.
Yeah. I mean, we opened up last year in November or so, and outside of trying to obviously get into more of the community and food and secure locations, it was trying desperately to get into schools too, but we just kept just running into roadblocks for many reasons, definitely one being budgetary reasons. So meeting Rachel and kind of was like, so that was the middle person. That was the person we needed in order to get our greens, our produce into these school systems. So once we, had Rachel here, Jeff, and told them what we wanted to do, we saw we had a mutual alignment in terms of our goals and what we wanted to, just complete over the next several months or years or so. And luckily the pilot started out, and we had to do out and making sure we were providing quality greens, obviously, just the logistics wise. And after the first few weeks, we were off running to the race after that point. And, we even, to Warren, to your point, we wanted to provide something a little bit different to the kids so that they could, grasp a different type of greens, not just lettuce. So we played with different types of lettuce. We played with topsoil, we played with spinach. So we introduced some things in what we were providing, just so it just wasn't just your basics. So maybe the kids could, gravitate to something else or become familiar with something that they had no idea, one again being topsoil. And, after seeing, just the smiles on their faces, Warren, me shooting you an email every once in a while, hey, how's the kids doing? Do they like the greens? What's going on? And getting that good feedback, we were ecstatic. We're still ecstatic that this is still going on, and wanted just to continue to transcend throughout the state and throughout different other communities, different locations. So, again, Calmer was a godsend last year. We're still working with him now. We want to continue to work with him. And again, just to see this, just to keep going and moving in a positive direction as we possibly can. So we don't really have anything bad to say with anybody. Even Warren, I met somebody the other day, and your name is like synonymous with like getting schools healthy food. This was just a random person. Like, yeah, I know a gentleman down there in Bridgeton like that has to be Warren. Has to be Warren. Like, yeah, your name is synonymous with that. So again, I'm just happy and ecstatic just to be a part of the team like everybody that's on the call right now.
Well, I appreciate that, Desmond, because when we rolled it out with Rachel in the common market, one of the big things was the marketing of your greens and the education of the different greens that they would get. And, in those 3 schools, we had big posters of, Desmond greens.
Yeah, I got a text message, a random text message of somebody that visited Camden School. And that caught me off guard. I got approached by a young kid randomly. Said, "You're the GeoGreens guy." I said, "Yeah, I guess I am." So, yeah, I'll take it. I love that.
And I love hearing all that. And I think maybe just to translate some context for Katie as well of how Lima Farms became part of this pilot too is, I think oftentimes when people think about local food in schools, they think about produce. And that is oftentimes where school districts start. And it's amazing and exciting to be incorporating more local food. And I remember the conversation with Warren too, of like, okay, but if we could also use this funding to do non-produce, like what would you be interested in? And I remember you just kind of like even breaking some of your mental boundaries of, oh, we can do more than just produce. And one of the conversations was, well, we have a big Latino population in our school district, and I would love to do carne asadas to support, some very specific high school meals. And then we went out and worked with our partners at Zone 7, another wonderful local food hub that works directly with family farms in New Jersey as well. And that's how we got connected to Lima. So maybe I can let Katie share your experience of connecting some of your product to Bridgeton, but just wanted to give that context as well.
Take it away, Katie.
Hi. So actually, when Luke over at Zone 7, because we work with him through the summer for greens, and he asked me if we could provide like 200 pounds of pork shoulder. I didn't even ask what it was for. I just said, okay, well, it'll take a few months. We don't have 200 pounds of pork shoulder sitting around here. And, we have our own challenges. Slaughter facilities, there aren't any that we go to. We drive all the way out past Quakertown in Pennsylvania. So that's a USDA facility. And so I said, well, it's going to take a couple months, for us to have that. And he said, okay, that's okay. And I still didn't know what it was going for until we delivered it the first time. And I said, what are you doing with 200 pounds of pork shoulder? And that's when he said, oh, it's going to the school. And that's when I said, they do that? I said, I'd like that in my kid's school. And I had no idea that I mean, I thought it was going to something else in Philly. Like, I don't know. I just had never thought it was going to a school. And so we've done that a couple times since then. And I mean, I think it's great. It's really, it's all about keeping it local. And our farm here has just, actually, when COVID hit, our sales went through the roof because people couldn't get what they needed to get at the ShopRite. I mean, they just couldn't get it. And we've retained a lot of customers since that, and really keep ramping up every year the amount that we're doing. And we're just completely selling out of everything. So it's been good. And I think the school program is so necessary. I look at the healthy schools menu that my kids come home with, and it's like there's a few random. It's not great. It's not ideal. It's not what it could be. And, it's just baby steps, doing little bits at a time, and doing like you're doing with the salad bar, and just introducing different, opportunities, but really teaching. That piece is kind of missing. It's like you can't just put the food out there and not talk about it. And how do you get all that in within a 40-minute period to eat lunch and have recess and get outside and let them play? Nobody wants to take away time during the rest of the school day to talk about these basic life lessons. So I think it's great.
I think for sort of everybody, but we'll start with Rachel and Terry on this one, or Warren on this. After the grant's gone, how do we keep these relationships, and how do we help schools get the funding and things that they need to expand these programs and move beyond just these pilots? How do we get to that next step?
Great question. So when we started the pilots back in 2020, or so we started March of 2021 or 2022. I'm sorry, this year time. So we did the pilot from March to end of July. So it was around a 6-month pilot, and we're also continuing the pilot this school year. And our intention all along was to be demonstrating what can happen when school districts have these additional resources at the table, so that we could actually affect statewide policy. Like I mentioned, there are actually 15 states across the country right now that have state budgets for local food incentives for school meal programs. So our goal of this pilot was to demonstrate through these focused programs with school districts that are already doing a really great job around local sourcing, what can happen if resources like this were made available to all school districts across the state of New Jersey. Now, I think, again, what we didn't know at the time was that LFS was going to be something that was on the table. And so I think in many ways, this funding that's coming through USDA is allowing us to expand this pilot to many more districts across the state of New Jersey. And then the question is, what happens when LFS funding goes away? And I think, one, we hope that these connections that are being made from school districts to farmers and the aggregators that support that will continue, but also recognizing that funding is a critical piece. And that was something we continue to hear in the evaluation of this work and having conversations with food service directors, that without that additional funding at the table, this level of purchasing might not continue. And so our goal, and the pilot's goal, is to continue to make the case for why there actually should be, like there are in many other states, a dedicated budget line at the state level here in New Jersey to support school districts in making those additional purchases available, and recognizing that all those dollars would go back to New Jersey family farmers, have that economic incentive, and ultimately affect the quality and the types of foods that are entering into school meal programs.
And just to elaborate too, Ed, we're going to continue to work with Rachel on tracking the relationships with farmers and purchases, and the dollars that we spend locally, as well as along with the New Jersey Department of Ag and what Nicole said earlier about that LFS money. We're tracking all that information, so it's being looked at in two different areas, So we also have supply chain assistance funds that we're getting from the USDA. So there's a lot of money coming in, and what we're trying to, demonstrate is we're putting all this money into food, and it's really helping me because as my food cost is being supplemented, my labor cost is rising. I just got an email today that, we're going to have to raise the minimum wage to $14.31 on top of what we already pay our higher end employees in the cafeteria. So that piece of pie is getting smaller because labor is starting to gobble more of that up. So we need this assistance in food costs to be able to do that. Continue to do what we do. And Kate, I wish I had known that you didn't know it was going to a school because, that pork was treated with love. We overnight roasted it. It was seasoned with love. And if you could have seen the kids dancing in line, that carne asada, there were kids, putting their sour cream sauce on it, and they were dancing, a real local flour corn tortilla shell from here. It was amazing. So I wish you could have been here to see it, but just know that when you send it down to us, it's going to a good place. So thank you.
So now, because I work with producers all the time, this is going to be my producer question to Kate and Desmond. And Kate, you touched on the lack of processing facilities in the state as a hindrance. Where are you guys on capacity? Like, how much more can your businesses grow within this niche? And then how do we sort of start to train other farmers into working in this field?
Well,
Not to take away your business, but to expand.
No, we that's kind of what's needed really, is to train other people to be able to do the same, because we have over 250 probably head of cattle right now, and we're growing every year. And we've actually applied. So in 2021, we applied for the first part of a slaughterhouse facility abattoir grant. And then we applied again this past year, for the second piece of that grant. And so we have been awarded 2 grants that have given us enough substantial money that we are proceeding with building our own USDA slaughter facility, because we just cannot rely on the local. There just isn't, and clearly the grant was put out there because it's clearly obvious to USDA that it's a problem because there just isn't enough food security by having just a handful of large abattoirs, and everybody has to rely on these few places to travel to go to. So by doing that, then we have complete control, and so we can scale up to do whatever we need to do. So if we're right now, our own market here on our farm, we're selling out of everything, but we can't get our animals in because, we're in a monthly routine with them, and he doesn't have any more openings. He can't take, we have them to take, but he can't take them. So if we had our own here, we could just do it, and we could fulfill what we need to do for quantity, but we're stuck. And so, that's a big, step to be able to construct a facility like this, but there's plenty of opportunities to start small. And
Yeah.
we talk a lot here amongst ourselves at the farm about.
All right. Desmond, how are things with you and
how
your ability to grow and expand?
I think she's still talking. Oh, I didn't want to cut her off.
No, she muted.
Trying to talk. Okay. Sorry about that. Well, we have like a unique situation in that we're all indoors. We're located in an existing warehouse. So we're growing 365 all the time, around the clock. When it comes to a program like this, you know, we've had conversation about it in the past. It's purely, you know, the consistency and not allowing like gaps in the time. When I say that, I mean, you know, we have equipment that's here and that's being utilized and that's operational. And if that equipment isn't filled with produce, then that's an expense. That's something that we're losing all the time. So we want to make sure that we have the volume in front of us so that we can constantly be growing and getting it out to the schools and the communities. Now, if that pot continues to grow in more schools or within these programs, then again, we're going 365. We can continue to provide those schools, and that's what we want to continue to do. However, the caveat is, again, we are in an existing space. So while we have a space and while we're going 365, we're at 100% capacity. So we need more space to continue to grow. So that's what we're in a process of doing now to expand, to grow the business. So again, we can continue to satisfy more demand, go and reach out to more schools. And again, that's where the consistency, that's where the long-term partnerships, that's where the longevity comes into play, because if that's already in place, then it's easier to expand. It's easier to know, okay, this room over here is going to be filled up. This volume is going to be allocated to this area, and so on and so forth. But if there's that inconsistency, those ebbs and flows, that's not efficient for us. The way that we grow, the way that we're efficient in running our business. That's ultimately why we don't work with certain niches. I'll use restaurants, for example. There's just too much fluctuation. There's too much ebb and flow. So one week they want a lot, next week they don't want a lot, and now we have something. Now we have a lot of food waste. Now we have produce here. We don't know where it's going. Versus working in bulk in a sense, and working in, again, consistency. I sound like a broken record, where we know it's grown, it's going where it needs to go out, and then we're constantly just that door is continuing to revolve and keep going. So again, as long as hopefully everyone starts to see that the trajectory is on the positive side, then we can continue to satisfy that demand. But we just need to know that it's going to be there. If it's not going to be there, then that's also why we work with other areas too. But this is one of our most critical clients, our critical initiatives that we want to focus on.
All right. Thank you, guys. Devin, do you have any wrap-up questions for the panelists?
Other than who's cooking dinner, because now I'm really hungry after all that good food talk. I'm driving down to Bridgeton tonight. I think we can end it there. I feel like we're just about out of